So I started with the neuroscience book today and um, was doing the personality tests and kind of came to the conclusion, despite what I've said previously, what my personality type was, that I'm more of an ENFJ, um, specifically in regards to the like introverted intuiting and the extroverted feeling, the NI and the FE. Um, I think in regards to the introverted intuiting, I identified with a lot of the section that was like on the essential tips on how to like educate. Like when I was reading that, I realized like, well, the really obvious one was like the finger reading. Um, like realizing that I even do that on a computer. Like I'll like have stuff and I'll be doing that, and it just like helps me stay focused, which I think is like kind of what they're talking about. Um, and then it says that it's beneficial to help them develop specifics so they can actualize an idea, which is something I've said, like in other terms, I've said, like this idea that I come up with great ideas, or I, even something with like art, like I'll be like, oh, this would be a really cool drawing. But I won't see it through. Like somebody else has to step in and either see it through or like motivate me to do it. And that reminded me a lot of that. Um, like in regards to work, I definitely think that I'm like an ideas person. Even there, I think because it's my job, I kind of feel like I see it through more. It's like less of a hobby. I mean, same with school. Um, and so I'll see it through a little better. But if I have a good but not like authoritarian person telling me how to like finish, I'll do like a better job. Um, I realize like when it comes to my work too, and school, that I really need to be like externally stimulated and removed from the monotony of my work. So I'll get up and do something more fun sometimes at work for just a minute. Like it's still work related, but it's more exciting. Or like if I'm doing a lot of homework, like if I have a long paper to write, sometimes I'll just like I'll set goals for myself, like, oh, write for an hour, and then you get like a half hour of like a movie or a book of your own choosing, or like bake something. I mean, anything, just something that like takes me out of the monotony of that task. Um, I think as far as the extroverted feeling part goes, I definitely related a lot to that. I had already deduced that I was right brained, even though we're kind of moving away from thinking that single mindedly about it. Um, they talk about the ENFG feels intuitive, which I really related to. I think as a child, I used to always tell people I thought I was psychic, because you don't really understand that. As an adult, I realized like, oh, I just kind of can like, intuit a situation, which I think is also like feeling out the room, which I do a lot. That's like for my job is really helpful because I do a lot of sales. So some people do benefit from you telling them like things like what you want, what they want, and some people don't. I also waitress sometimes, and it's similar. Like not everybody wants you to come up to their table 75 times, but some people like they need you there like at all times so they don't ever have to want for anything. And I think you really, if you're intuitive at all, like that's helpful, really helpful for those jobs. Um, Let me think. Oh yeah, the tips on how to deal with FE thinkers deal with empathy and ethics a lot, which I also relate to. Um, I Instead of being like a future thinker, I mean, it says you could be a future thinker or a what if, and I'm definitely more of a what if kind of person than a plan for the future. I think I started looking back at our, I think previous chapter, I think chapter 4, when they talked about all the regions of the brain and which ones I had starred that I felt like I related to. Of those, um, only like one of them was not like only one of the things that ENFJs supposedly use, like parts of the region of the brains that they use more. Only one of those I didn't check mark when I originally did the chapter 4, like kind of assignment or whatever, um, which I thought was fitting. But I think one of my favorite things about this section is I think I get really into astrology sometimes. I don't know if I 100% believe it, but I like the idea of it. And the personality stuff is really similar. It's like you, um, you know, like I'm a Pisces, but if you actually know astrology, like that's not what I am. Like that's my sun sign, but I have all these other sides, and it's the same thing with like I'm an extrovert, but you can't treat me like every extrovert. I, you know, don't respond as well to like I can't have constant influx of stuff like some extroverts can. Um, anyway, I think that's really cool. I did really enjoy the memory section of our brain and learning reading. Well, I mean, there were 2 or 3 sections on it, but I kept trying to look for my particular memory issue. My whole life, people have been like I got therapy for it because people were like, it's really weird that you don't remember stuff before 10. And even stuff after 10, like, I remember it, but not the way other people remember stuff. And, like, the only one that I read that really, like, kind of resonated with me was infantile amnesia. But obviously, like, that's supposed to stop when you're, like, 3, because that part of your brain develops. And I don't have, like, full-on memory loss. I mean, before 10, I really can't remember anything except for, like, stories my mom has told me. And then I have kind of, like, sense memories of those. But a lot of people, because of it, were like, that's a trauma thing. Like, not having memory is trauma-related. And so I got therapy for it. And, like, from what they deduced, it wasn't trauma-related. So I'd be really interested in seeing, like, other people's opinions on that. Because I don't feel like our book, I mean, maybe it's just not that common. Our book didn't talk about it a whole lot. I mean, it talks about a lot of different kinds of memories, like the future planning and all that, which I do have, and like emotional memories, which I think I have. I mean, maybe that goes with the intuitive part of me. Like, I'm good at remembering things based on how I felt about them, or I reference them to something else that happened, and that helps me get a better idea of a memory. It's weird. The other part of this that I found interesting that I kind of wanted to talk about, and I'm not trying to be controversial here, but at one point he says something about wisdom, and he makes a point about terrorism and how terrorists cannot be wise because their decisions are not for the greater good. And I know that they go through lists of like what counts as like the greater good or like wisdom, like what creates that wisdom. But I just kept wondering, like, but if you were, like, if the terrorists truly thought that what they were doing was for the greater good, like if they believed a group of people were evil and they were harming the world and they killed them or whatever, and they thought it was for the greater good, is there wisdom in that? Like, I guess I'm just trying to see other people's opinions. And like what I got to, or what I was like getting to the conclusion kind of, was that like it almost felt more like it's like the teacher, like whoever taught those people that a whole group of another people were evil. It was like their fault, like it was their lack of wisdom, or they didn't instill wisdom in someone else. I am like by no means condoning terrorism. I'm just processing, is there a universal wisdom? And if so, who is it based off of? Like, what's the middle point of that? I don't know if that's kind of a convoluted question, but I think it'd be an interesting conversation to have. So, a lot this week in reading. A lot of me talking. All right, thanks.